Actually, the more the better, so I can help educate.
Now, back to Willard and Dibs on 95.7 The Game.
Grandy, I'm glad you played that. That's kind of been like that's the flagship soundbite of the Kyle is smug party. Mm-hmm. What if I asked you this? Is that so bad?
That Kyle's smug?
Well, if I even submit to you that he is, and I personally don't, I don't find him smug. I know people who do. I know people who find Steve Kerr smug. I don't.
My smug meter goes Kyle Kapler.
Wow, you're putting him ahead of Cap.
Maybe I cape for Cap, so maybe I got to take the cape off sometimes. But
wow.
But Steve Kerr is not even in that discussion.
Okay. Yeah, like, you find people how you find people, I guess. But arrogance, if you want to call it that. And again, I'm not saying that I do find him arrogant, but what if we did? He's the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. I'm only really bothered by arrogance if that spills into action. In other words, are you cruising around in life acting like you're better than people? Or are you good to the people around you?
Right.
I've not heard a damn thing about Kyle Shanahan not being good to his people. In fact, I think you can see it in what has taken place just this week. Now, you may have a different spin or a different view on this, but again, Pelissero yesterday, this is not a bleep you situation. Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, Trey Lance, Brock, Jimmy. Jimmy and Kyle had beef, but even still, you've watched the 49ers in this particular case. They're almost handing the next move to Trey. Like, if Trey wants to be QB3, he probably can be.
Yeah. And
if he wants to be traded, they're going to try like hell to make that happen. Mm-hmm. They're almost giving him the power here. When you heard him say yesterday, look, we need to find a situation where Trey's heart is in it. If that's here, awesome. But if it's not, we're going to try to do right by Trey. I feel like we've seen that from the 49ers quite a bit. Maybe the only exception would be Jimmy.
Right. And the Jimmy situation, we know how long that soap opera went on. Here's the thing. So I see you on the Xfinity mobile text line. I see you on the YouTube chat. And the bottom line is this, and to everybody listening, hopefully traffic's not too bad. The bottom line is this. My argument or my stance versus your stance is never going to win because you have the trump card of, hey, that's life. Or you're a Niner fan, you kind of got to get over it, right? So there's no way that when I'm speaking and when I'm saying, hey, this is how somebody might feel or whatever, feelings, if you take feelings out of it, logically, you're not wrong. So you're not going to lose this conversation about how they went about things. It's just about how everybody personally feels they went about things.
Sure.
And if you look at how they drafted Trey, you drafted a guy, and I see you, the 707. You're kidding me, Styles. The first year they didn't start him because he came out of North Dakota State and played 1 year at college to be developed, and you're not going to develop him in the middle of a Super Bowl run. Horrible mistake. That's my point. That's my point. And you can't hold these people accountable because at the end of the day, you're a Niner fan, right? So you're stuck in this middle where you feel annoyed and you want your pitchfork, but you're also better than, 25 other teams? Mm-hmm. So I that's my point. They went and they got this kid, okay, who I looked it up today, Willard. He was never projected higher than 5, but not projected lower than 10. So everybody out there,
for sure, yes.
So, but people are doing this revisionist history to why did he came out of nowhere? No, he didn't. He was right there in the mix with the other 5 QBs.
He was a big name.
He always was.
You can absolutely say, what the hell were you thinking now? And that's a fair question.
Right.
It's completely a fair question. It's also fair, and I think what you're getting at, let me do the quick math. Let's see, are they 23-11 in the Trey Lance era? And that's just regular season. 23-11, and then both trips to the playoffs, multiple 2-1 each time, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we also add on the 4-2, that makes them 27-13 in the Trey Lance era. What are you all yelling about?
Did you ever feel
they've won 2 out of every 3 games?
Just answer this question for me.
Okay.
Did you ever feel in your heart of hearts from when they called Trey Lance's name in 2021 that the Niners truly believed in Trey Lance? And if so, when?
It's hard to take a retrospective thought out of that answer. I think the second that they said his name, we had to believe that.
Right.
Like that's
even weird enough.
That's a hell of a swing.
They said his name, and as soon as they said his name, there were already reports of, but did they want Mac Jones?
Well, sure. I never knew what to believe on all that. The whole idea of drafting Mac Jones third was crazy to me. I think looking at that from a logical standpoint, it's more likely that the trade was made not to get Mac Jones. It was the trade was made because they decided not to get Mac Jones, because they could have gotten Mac Jones right where they were sitting.
Right.
And I think everybody kind of knew that. So you're not going to move up to get Mac Jones. He's going to be there at 12. Why would you give up next year?
But people start throwing the option route out there.
It's true. No, you got to you got to go get your guy when it's a quarterback in the draft. But I never believed that they were going to take Mac Jones at number 3 overall. And that's such a big commitment. 3 years worth of first-round capital, plus more, in order to select a guy in that moment. Yeah, it felt like they fully believed in him, and I fully understood why he was not going to start year one. And I think that the 49ers were confirmed correct in that they went to the NFC title game that year with Trey just watching, although he did play a little bit. I know he got a couple touchdowns in there. So I thought that all made sense. But if you ask it to me now, and I look back at their behavior, no, it never felt like that. Not once they got to training camp.
Thank you.
And you know what? That doesn't really hit me in my emotional button.
It doesn't have to hit you. It might hit somebody.
Like, have you ever bought the jeans that looked good at the store, and then you got home and you're like, oh,
got to try them on.
It doesn't fit right.
Don't feel like going in the fitting room.
Yeah, well, or even if you did, sometimes you know those store mirrors, man. They put magic dust in those things.
That's
Make it look good.
Yeah.
Did they have buyer's remorse? I bet. At some point, I don't know if it's right away, because right away you're like, this looks really rough around the edges, but we'll work on it. We're going to develop him, and then he gets hurt, and so that slows the development. Like, some of this is actually bad luck, and I don't even know if it means, quote unquote, Trey can't play. But I have firmly believed that for me, this was my watershed moment. The second they brought Jimmy back last year, that said to me, the Niners don't like where Trey is.
I felt the same way.
And I do not believe they have liked where Trey was at any point since then.
No. I think that the project that they thought, and I know you got kids, I'm not dealing with it yet, but hey, Dad, I got to work on this science project. You thought it was going to take, an hour? It actually took 4 hours, and you had to go to Target. You had to go pick up stuff. That's what happened with the Niners. They knew he'd be a project, but they thought, honestly, Willard, it sounds crazy, but I do believe this. They missed on Patrick Mahomes, and they thought, hey, maybe we can strike gold in this situation.
See, I actually think that leaves out the money aspect of this. The money aspect was huge, and there is actually even reporting over the last couple of weeks with regard to what the 49ers, I think, got to a point with Jimmy Garoppolo where they realized, first of all, it's not just the big money that he made at the time. The idea of re-signing him to another contract with the way quarterback salaries were going, he would not have been making $27 a year. He would have been making $40 a year.
Yeah.
And the Niners are looking at, wait for it, the draft success that they've had, pulling in young players from Kittle to Warner to Debo to Bosa, and the desire to get out on the market and pay people like Trent Williams and eventually Christian McCaffrey. And the Niners looked at that and said, we need a quarterback on a rookie deal. So let's go find one who we feel we can win with.
Let's go get a guy.
Let's go get this guy.
Who's barely played.
But he can learn behind Jimmy for a year. So we do not need to do this immediately, but we are going to flip our finances over the year after that. We'll trade Jimmy and then go to Trey, and we're going to have an unbelievable roster around him. And for a young kid, that will help ease his way into the league. And that's the plan. And we don't need to tell you all how that plan got blown up. It exploded in 27 ways, from Jimmy's injury to Trey's injuries to Trey's eventual inability to move forward. And then the emergence of Brock Purdy, like it exploded in about 5 different directions. But that was the plan. And I don't think when you look at it through that lens, it's that crazy of a plan.
No, I don't think so.
It made sense. It just didn't work.
And how many times do we see it work, and how many times do we see it work to what degree, right? Patrick Mahomes off the top of your head, but Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be Patrick Mahomes regardless. So I don't think we can sit there and say, well, if it wasn't for this, then it wouldn't have worked out that way. Still thinking about Trey Lance and how everything did go down, I guess the question ultimately is, it goes on the scouting department and what they thought that they saw. I was literally reading the breakdowns, and they said he was this was from NFL.com.
Yep.
Trey had build up speed. That means it takes him a while to get going. That means you probably shouldn't be running him in the option.
My car has good build-up speed,
There
too.
you go.
It
There you
goes
go.
0 to 60. 0 to 60 in about, 12.5 seconds?
So,
something like that.
So when you look at Brock Purdy now moving forward, Willard, if you have a guy in Kyle Shanahan who just admitted that he whiffed on his 3rd overall pick in Trey Lance, now you're telling me that we're supposed to believe you, Kyle, that Brock Purdy is the real deal, even though we've seen much more. Mm-hmm. We've seen much more, but I could see how fans feel. I haven't seen enough to believe.
Oh, totally.
To just say, okay, Kyle, we know you messed up there, but hey, Brock, you're our guy. Now, but that's why I'm saying, why are you upset now?
Right.
Be upset if you don't have the Lombardi, if you want to be Super Bowl or bust. You haven't even played yet.
If Brock turns out to be a terrible quarterback, then everybody's got a right to be completely upset.
Yeah.
But guess what? The chances of that are between slim and none. Like, you don't need to take Kyle's word for it. Just go get the tape.
Yeah, look, I'm not trying to...
Go watch the 33.5 points a game that he posted for a stretch of 8 games. Go look at it.
Well, look,
that's an accident?
To all the Brock stars out there, you better watch how they're talking about Sam Darnold, because you continue to say how Sam Darnold's going to flip. That kind of takes away from how good Brock Purdy is.
But that's because we get obsessed with raw talent. We get obsessed with it. That's why I don't understand all the people who are like, look at Trey Lance, look at this raw talent. How could they have mismanaged and not developed that? A great arm does not make you a great quarterback. Great legs does not make you a great quarterback. Mm-hmm. It's not just turnkey. Oh, guy, get a good arm. He's 6'4". Well, you're a dummy if you can't develop that. Do you know how many 6'4" people have a great arm?
Yeah, they're walking around everywhere.
Not in the NFL.
Yeah.
Let's go to TC and Sac. Let's take your calls. 888-957-9570. Peter King in 45 minutes at 3:30. Nobody's more dialed in with Kyle Shanahan than Peter King. That's coming up in 45 minutes. TC and Sac, you're on with Willard and Styles. TC, thanks for calling. What's up?
Willard and Styles, what's going on?
What's good?
Hey.
Nothing, just livid about the whole situation. I'm going to keep it short and simple. Look, check it out. I'm not even a baseball fan. I watch it here and there. I'm not even a Giants fan. I'm a diehard Niner fan, and I'm over the BS. Check it out. One thing Kapler and Shanahan are different at least Kapler has uplifted the youngsters. He's calling up the youngsters from the River Cats. He's giving all these youngsters shots. He's instilling the most confidence in them. Shanahan ain't did that not one time with Trey Lance since we got him. You get what I'm saying? So why not? Why not get at this dude and stop Captain saving him, Willard? Shanahan's in the wrong, bro.
TC, why are you making it about one player? If you're going to say, like, you just gave credit to Gabe Kapler for uplifting young people who, by and large, this year are simply being called up by no decision of Gabe Kapler. And I would argue at this point, only one of them has confirmed himself as a really good baseball player. I could give you a list from the ceiling to the floor of young players who've come to the 49ers in the last 6 years and popped. And you want to spotlight one guy and then paint Kyle as somebody who doesn't develop young players? What are we talking about?
Willard, we all understand that you love Shanahan to 1,000 degrees. Everybody's not feeling like that. You got to hold that dude accountable, man, period.
You've got to answer my question, TC. What's your answer to Kyle can't develop young players? And then I give you Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel, handpicked by Kyle Shanahan from the Senior Bowl, and Brandon Ayuk, who ended up in his doghouse and then pulled him back out. What's your answer to the label that you just placed on him, TC?
Guy. That's the only Brandon Ayuk's the only guy in the doghouse. Everybody else came polished and prepared already.
Oh,
Brock
God.
already seasoned.
Nobody
Listen,
comes
Brock
out of
was already-
college polished and prepared. That doesn't exist. That's not true, TC.
He was seasoned already. These guys have played multiple years in college and was seasoned. Trey Lance only played that one season. What were they seeing? You get what I'm saying? And then
That's where we agree, TC. They made a mistake. But that's not the label you started with. You started with young players get ignored and do not get inspired by Kyle Shanahan. And I gave you a short list. I could give you a long one of people who disprove your label.
Listen, Kyle and Lynch made a mistake on this, Willard, and there's no getting over that, bro.
I'm not.
I don't care about saving them or any of that. Yeah, you are.
TC, TC, we're not going to yell at each other. I've literally said that statement. I don't know how. The bucket is full. They screwed up. They messed up the pick. I don't know what you're hearing me say, brother. I don't know what you're hearing me not say. They messed up the pick. They made a huge mistake. And they've pivoted brilliantly, might I add. But nobody's going to sit here and say they didn't make a mistake with Trey Lance. But to argue that Kyle Shanahan somehow turns his back on and ignores young players who are drafted is provably false.
I think,
it's provably false.
Honestly, I think it is apples and oranges, baseball to football. I wouldn't have gone that route anyway.
Agreed.
I wouldn't have gone that route anyway.
Yeah, Gabe Kapler does not draft those players. He does not call those players up.
Yeah.
He is knocked into action when they arrive in his dugout.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Shanahan is making the calls on who gets picked and how they get sent up through a system that does not have a minor leagues. Which, by the way, total aside, really cool article by Jim Trotter today about the idea of Trey Lance being the poster for the NFL needing a developmental league.
I mean, rough go for Trey, but well, I hear you.
I put it this way. I've long thought, right? XFL, USFL, Alliance of American Football, none of these leagues are ever going to work until they're actual true minor leagues for the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You want to, would you watch?
Of course.
Would you watch in March if the, what do you want to call the 49ers? Call them the 48ers, okay? The minor league team for the Niners, and Trey Lance is playing. Oh, I'm watching that.
Yeah.
But I'm not watching this crap that they put on every year with all the people who didn't make the NFL trying to, you know what I mean?
There'd be a lot of those people in it, though.
Yeah, but if it was affiliated.
Right.
So a fan base could be like, that's my team.
Yeah.
Don't you think that would be better?
I mean, look, you put football and an affiliate. That's what people thought That's what a lot of people thought the XFL was going to do. Try to get that affiliation with the NFL.
I don't think the NFL will allow it. I don't think they've been into it.
Well, no, but it was, hey, how do you get people to watch spring football? Yeah. It's associated with an NFL team.
Nathan and Rialto's next up here on Willard and Styles. Dibs out today. Hey, Nathan, what you doing?
Hey, guys, how you doing?
What's up?
So I'm just, So, man, listen, I just got to say this, and this is my point. I think we hit on a lot that the draft was one issue as far as taking the quarterback that high with that little experience. The odds of him failing just to start are high already. The biggest problem, and I can't speak for a lot of them, but for me it's like you talked about the project of the puzzle piece. Have you ever started a project and realized, man, this is going to take a little bit of time, more than I thought? But did you throw your hands up and say, I'm going to quit early on? No. The 49ers quit on Trey Lance way too soon. Okay? You sat up there and had a press conference last year, and you told the whole world this is his franchise. Okay? If this had been just any other draft pick, fifth rounder, and it's just, let's have a competition, let the best man win, okay, then I get it. But you're going to tell me that you're going to tell the whole world that this is your franchise, and less than a year later, you're going to make him a third-string quarterback?
I guess, Nathan, the obvious question that I have no doubt everybody's asking with your statement, because I understand where you're coming from on that, but what would you have them do? You would have them turn their back on somebody who went 8-0, and are you aware of how that would be received in the locker room? Like, the team would not allow you to not start Brock Purdy right now. You know what I mean?
Right, but here's all the thing in the world is that you said about Jimmy. Well, the team loved Jimmy, and he told the whole team very the get-go that Jimmy was going to be the backup, and Jimmy had a lot more accomplished than Brock Purdy ever had. And the team said, we're okay with it. He had a meeting for that reason to tell them, because he knew how well-respected Jimmy Garoppolo was in that locker room. So he had a team meeting and says, we're going to make sure that you guys are on board with Trey's our guy.
Right,
so
but
that's
that's ignoring the context of the fact that an entire offseason was spent with the assumption that Jimmy was already gone. And the team knew that. Like, Jimmy back last year happened at the last second. I think it happened right around now, right? In fact, I remember I got the news while I was waiting in line to pick up my kid from school, which means school had already started. It would be like you know what I mean? It was 2 weeks before the first game, Nathan. So that's a very different situation than what we're looking at now, where there's another player who's on the roster long term, and I would argue, I know it's a shorter term, but Jimmy never had an 8-game run like Brock had last year.
Depends who you ask.
Well, how do you mean? Nathan, thank you very much. That's a good call.
Well, I'll throw it to our guy.
Statistically,
over our guy, Grandy, for overtime. Grandy told me he felt that he felt more inspired by Jimmy's run than Brock's. Or we not to put you on Front Street, Grandy, but we've had that conversation before. So
which run by Jimmy?
Jimmy's debut, first 5 games, I was more convinced Jimmy Garoppolo was the guy than Brock Purdy for those 2 stretches of games.
I actually agree with you, except for the difference is that happened in a not highly leveraged spot.
Worse roster, though.
Jimmy's there for a team that is not winning. There's not pressure to win, and obviously there was no playoffs. Like, for me, this Brock conversation, where are we at with the Brock conversation? What if he took over and the team was 500 and he went on a nice run, but then at the end of the year, that was it? He just went home. Mm-hmm. Or did the Cowboy and Seahawks games from last year make you go, oh, okay, big blank Brock?
Yeah.
That different.
No, and honestly,
41 points against the Seahawks.
And honestly, it might get to a point where you refire up the highlights, as funny as it sounds, because you remember it in your head a certain way. I think people get caught up, and obviously he's had the injury. I think people get caught up with how it ended and having to throw out Josh Johnson. But when you were in the midst of it and the feelings that you had when Brock first came in and you're on number 3 and there were a couple rumblings of, hey, this guy can do some things, and then you see what he does. You know me, I like to live somewhere in the middle of, I like what Brock did, and I'm not saying that he can't replicate it, but he played very well. I'm also giving credence to the roster because that's why people are saying Sam Darnold can be a dude.
Absolutely, but I'd also add that Jimmy came at a time where it was like, you haven't had a drink of water in a week and someone put a glass of water in front of you.
Right.
That tastes good.
Yeah.
Like, if someone put a glass of water in front of me when I've just had 3 glasses, this is the greatest glass of water we've seen in 6 years, but I'm not that thirsty right now.
Right.
So,
no, I hear you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway.